Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Nancy Rynes, and today we're going to be talking about a pro tip for all of you who are artists out there about finishing your painting in a frame. This painting is called Sweet Nothings, and it's a piece that I thought was done until I put it into a frame. So today we are going to talk about how to finish your painting in its frame. So I've put my painting in the frame right now. It's in a gold leaf frame. And what I'm doing is evaluating what else needs to be done to make this painting really sing. So here I'm coming in and just adding in some highlights, very subtle highlights. This actually is a blue color. It's not white. A lot of times artists will make kind of a mistake, I think, and make all their highlights white, and that's actually not really the color of most highlights, especially on animals. So here I'm coming in, I've noticed, because I've now put this piece in the frame, I've noticed that I wanted to change up some things, like the color of that blue highlight on the rump of that horse. I wanted to make it a little bit different from the highlight color in other areas. And I'm coming in with a very dry brush here and adding some of that blue. It's kind of a turquoise blue highlight. And you can see, because the painting is totally dry already, that I can easily wipe off any mistakes that I'm making. Now I'm coming in here with a very deep gray and just giving some real light highlights to the nostrils of that horse because it looked a little flat to me. Now on this other horse, I'm coming in and I just wanted to change up the way those ears looked by adding a little bit of kind of a dark burnt sienna to the tips of the ears. A lot of horses will have that, and this particular horse did not, but I wanted to put that in just to add a little bit more, I guess, more balance to the horse's head. Now I'm coming in and also just amping up the edge of that horse's muzzle with a little bit of a similar kind of a deep burnt sienna mixed with a little bit more red in it. So I'm using quinacridone, I think it was a quinacridone red in there, and then kind of bringing in some of that same color along the edge of the neck. Now this is a very dry brush, so not much paint is being left over the top of it. It's not, I didn't want it goopy. I didn't want to add a huge layer of thickness. Now here I'm also modeling kind of that underside of the horse's muzzle where there's oftentimes a little bit of a shadow. And originally I didn't have much shadow there and it just didn't look right. So I'm making some changes here in that lower part of the jaw area, just to model that a little bit more. Now at this point I'm actually not looking at the reference photo. I'm making this into a painting based on my own knowledge and experience. You can look at a reference photo, but for me, there comes a point in a painting where you really just have to put the photo away and make it into a painting. And what you're not seeing here is that I'm stepping back a lot, and I'm stepping back 10 to 15 feet just to get a wider view of the painting from a distance. So here I'm just adding in, again, very dry brush with my oil paint. It's a mix of burnt umber, burnt sienna, and just a little bit of a lightened up gray. So it's a very light gray. I think it was Gamblin medium gray. And then I'm also darkening up again with a very dry brush, just that light area above the jawline, and then coming in and darkening up some areas in the nose area because it just wasn't reading right to me. And that's what happens when you put this painting in a frame and stand back and look at it. A lot of times you'll see things that just don't look quite right. And that's really what I'm fixing here, are just some subtle things that don't really work very well. Now we're going to go into kind of the lower part of the painting here, and the issue that I was having was that area of the red horse, kind of this rib cage area of the red horse was not looking right to me. So you can see I'm experimenting with different colors here to see what might work a little bit better. And that one color I tried didn't work well, so I just wiped it off. Again, because the painting is completely dry. So I'm coming in, this is actually a mix of white, cadmium orange, and cadmium lemon. And I think there's probably a little bit of burnt sienna in here as well. So I'm putting in a very light tone, and you'll see me modify this as we go on. But for the first part of it, I'm coming in with a very light, relatively cool tone, meaning it's not quite as warm as just straight orange would be. And now I'm coming in over the top of that and kind of mixing in into that wet paint a little bit more of an orange color. So it's the same pile of paint, but I just added a little bit more orange, cadmium orange to it. And as you see me go on here, I'm going to model that back, that the back and side of that red horse here just a little bit more. So it's important to just make sure that, you know, when you do this finish and frame, that this thing looks really good in the frame. And that's what we're doing here. I'm coming back in with some, this now is a mix of burnt sienna, a darker mix, as you can see, burnt sienna, and it was quinacridone red with just a little bit of white. And now I'm beginning to model the side of that horse just a little bit more. And I am mixing this darker red paint into that orange, light orange paint that I already laid down. So you can do that. You know, you can mix on the canvas, and that's what I'm doing here as you'll see me continue. It's just, again, it's changing up the way that that side of that horse looked. It wasn't reading right for me. It was too much the same color and the same look as the front of the horse, and so therefore it just didn't have the depth that I wanted. And it was a little bit too light, so it was interfering and calling attention to itself, and I didn't want the viewer's eye to go there. So that's why I'm experimenting here with changing up the way that the side of that horse looks. So I'm toning down the colors. It's not going to be as bright of an orange or as bright of a red as is present in like the neck and the face of the horse. It's going to be a little bit cooled down, a little grayed down, but it still has some color to it. It still has some interest. And again, I'm just mixing the paint on the canvas now. The lighter orange with that darker red mixture, the burnt sienna quinacridone red mixture. And right now it's looking pretty good. It's going in the direction that I want it to go. I'm bringing in a little bit more brighter, just slightly brighter orange. But again, you can see it's still a bit cooler and lighter in tone than the orange on the neck and the face of the horse. So it's not competing with the other parts of the horse for, you know, the viewer's attention. And still just coming in and modeling that orange into the existing red a little bit. I'm basically just playing around with it until I get it to look like I want it to look. So I've stopped with that for a while, and now I'm going to go back in and do some more modeling up here on the head and neck area. And this is bringing in that same burnt sienna quinacridone mixture into areas of the face and head, again, just to add a little bit more modeling to this horse. It needed a little bit more layers added to it to bring some depth and variety to that red horse. The dark horse had a lot of depth and variety, so I didn't really need to do a lot with that, but the red one needed some more attention. So you can see me bringing in a little bit more of a punchy quinacridone red burnt sienna mixture into certain areas of this painting. Now I am going into the black horse here, and with a very dry brush, bringing in up in the ears, I brought in a little bit of light blue, And here I'm going back and kind of working back and forth between the two horses. On the red horse now I'm kind of coming in with, again, some of that darker quinacridone red burnt sienna mixture, and just punching up some of the areas that I want to make a little bit darker, just to bring more interest and contrast into those areas. Again, this is a lot of very subtle work, and I do this a little bit at a time. Again, usually at this stage in the game with a very dry brush, so that I don't kind of muck up the paint layers. I want it to stay very dry, and so that I have multiple layers one on top of each other. Now here I'm coming back into the side of that red horse with some oranges again. Again, it's a very light, cool orange, and then working back up to the head with the same color, just bringing in some very subtle highlights using that same orange, but back up into the face. This brings cohesiveness into the painting, but you don't want to overdo it either. You don't want to use the same orange everywhere for everything. You want some variety, but you also want some cohesiveness. So that's really what I've been working on in this piece, is just pulling everything together. Now I'm coming into the dark horse here with that same warm mixture, and very lightly with a very dry brush, pulling in some long strokes of that warmer color. It doesn't show up very strongly, but what it does is, again, it brings the two horses together. There's a cohesiveness of color between those two horses as I'm finishing this painting up. Now I made a mistake, so I'm coming in and cleaning it up, and then coming back in and bringing more paint in and just fixing it as I go. Again, as you can see, it's a very light touch. I'm not coming in with a heavy hand at this point. Just very light brush strokes of these final layers of color. Now, I'm one of those people who doesn't consider a painting finished until it's out the door and sold. So I may actually work on this a little bit more later if it sits in my studio long enough, but I'm hoping to get this one up into the gallery real soon, so I don't keep noodling on it for the next 20 years. So at some point I have to call it done and let it go. But usually if I let these things sit in my studio, I keep working on them, as you'll see here. So in the ear, I'm working a little bit more on the ear because, again, it wasn't quite reading right to me as I stepped back and looked at it. So I'm bringing in it's a mix of burnt sienna and burnt umber into the ear to just darken it up in areas, and then also bringing a little bit of that same tone into the darker portions of the mane, and just to bring in some more contrast there. I had lost a little bit of contrast, and I wanted to bring that back. So at this point, it's actually looking pretty good. I'm letting it sit for a while and evaluating it, but this is the end stage of it at this point. And from here on out, what I'm going to do is we're going to look through the painting as it stands now. It looks pretty good. There's a lot of variety. It kind of holds itself together, and it looks good in the frame, which is really what I'm after with a piece like this. I want it to look really good in the frame, so it looks good on a gallery wall and sells. I mean, that's the whole point of all of this, is to get this painting out into its new home. And you can see I'm just highlighting some differences here in the two horses and showing you some of the detail. Now the red horse, just in case you're curious, it's actually called a curly Mustang. It's a Mustang that has curly hair instead of straight hair. And these are very prevalent in the western United States. But here's the whole piece in its frame. You can see it's looking pretty good, and it will probably be going off to the gallery soon. But I encourage you, when you have paintings like this, to try to finish them in its frame so that you can add the final touches and make the whole presentation look really great. All right, so for full demos and classes, I have a Patreon site. You can take a look at that, and I'll put the link in the description below. And if you want to book a workshop with me, send me an email at Nancy at nancyrynesstudio.com. And for more information on me or my art, please take a look at my website, nancyrynesstudio.com, where I have more art, more downloadable tutorials that you can purchase, and some free tutorials as well. So take a look at my website, nancyrynesstudio.com. Thanks so much.